Picture yourself in a quiet room, the world outside softened to a murmur, the lights dimmed to a gentle glow. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of old books, their pages worn smooth by time. You're holding one now, perhaps, its cover heavy in your hands, or maybe you're simply lying back, letting your thoughts drift like leaves on a slow-moving stream. Tonight, there's no rush, no clamor, no need to hold on to the present. Instead, let's step backward, gently into a time when the world was both vast and fragile, when empires that seemed eternal began to fray at the edges, their foundations crumbling under the weight of war, rebellion, and quiet decay. This is boring history for sleep, a journey not to thrill or startle, but to cradle you in the steady rhythm of the past. We're traveling to the early 20th century, to the years when the Great War reshaped the map of the world, not with sudden explosions, though those came, but with the slow, relentless erosion of old orders. This is a story of soldiers and monarchs, of muddy trenches in gilded palaces, of revolutions whispered in backrooms and waltzes danced in candlelit halls. It's a story of lives caught in the current of history, ordinary and extraordinary, all woven into the tapestry of a world on the brink of change. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of this world, your breath visible in the chill air, your feet grounded on earth that has seen too much. You're not here to fight or to judge, but to wander, to listen, to let the stories unfold. We'll begin in the trenches of Verdun, where the mud is a constant companion, where soldiers carve out moments of humanity amid the grind of survival. From there, we'll drift to the icy corridors of the Romanovs' Russia, where a dynasty's final days play out in whispers and betrayal. Then, we'll walk the fading markets of the Ottoman Empire, its centuries-old glory dissolving into dust and memory. And finally, we'll linger in the cafes of Vienna, where the last notes of a Habsburg waltz echo against the coming storm. Each step of this journey is slow, deliberate, like the turning of pages in a book you've always meant to read. The words will wrap around you, familiar yet distant, inviting you to sink deeper into the past. If you're awake, you might find yourself caught by the texture of a soldier's letter home, or the weight of a crown, no longer worn. If you're drifting towards sleep, the rhythm of these stories will carry you gently, like a boat on calm waters. There's no need to hold on too tightly. History is patient, and tonight, it's here to guide you, to lull you, to remind you of the quiet strength of those who lived through it. So, settle in, let the world of now fade, just for a little while. Let the sounds of the present, the hum of a distant car, the creak of a floorboard, blend into the sounds of then, the drip of rain in a trench, the scratch of a pen in a palace, the sigh of a city letting go of its past. This is your invitation to wander through the fall of empires, through mud and monarchs, through the heavy silence that follows the end of an era. Let's begin. Imagine yourself standing in a trench, the earth beneath your feet soft and unyielding, a cold, clinging mud that seeps through the seams of your boots. It's 1916, and you are at Verdun, a name that carries a weight you didn't understand when you first arrived. The air is heavy, thick with the scent of damp soil, mildew, and something sharper, something you've learned to ignore. Your greatcoat hangs heavy on your shoulders, soaked through by the constant drizzle that never seems to stop. The sky above is a flat, grey expanse, blending into the horizon where the land lies broken, scarred by the endless churn of war. This is not a place of heroics or grand gestures. This is a place of endurance where the rhythm of your life is dictated by the slow drip of rain, the creak of a ration tin, and the distant, ever-present thud of artillery. The trench is your home now, though it feels more like a wound carved into the French countryside. It's narrow, barely wide enough for two men to pass without brushing shoulders, and deep enough to shield you from the bullets that hum overhead. The walls are a patchwork of clay, sandbags, and wooden planks, some splintered from the weight of the rain, others reinforced with whatever scraps the engineers could find. You've learned the trench's zigzagging pattern by heart, its sharp angles designed to contain the blast of a shell or the sweep of a machine gun. Every few yards, there's a dugout, a low hollow carved into the earth where men huddle to sleep or write letters by the flicker of a single candle. The floor of the trench is a quagmire, a mix of mud and water that sometimes reaches your ankles, sometimes higher. You've stopped trying to keep your boots dry. They're swollen, the leather cracking. And your socks, if you still have a pair, are a sodden weight against your skin. You move carefully. Your steps deliberate because the mud is treacherous. It sucks at your boots, threatening to pull them off with every step. You've seen men lose a shoe to the mire, cursing as they fish it out, their hands caked with clay. The officers tell you to keep the trench clear, to shovel the mud away, but it's a losing battle. The rain keeps falling and the earth keeps swallowing. You've learned to accept it, just as you've accepted the ache in your shoulders from carrying your rifle, the weight of your pack, the constant itch of lice crawling across your skin. These are the rhythms of your life now, the small constants that anchor you in a world that feels like it's unraveling. Morning begins with the stand-to, a ritual as unchanging as the mud. Just before dawn, you climb onto the fire step, a narrow ledge built into the trench wall, and peer over the parapet into no man's land. The landscape is a desolate expanse of churned earth, barbed wire and the jagged remnants of trees, their branches stripped bare by shell fire. You grip your rifle, its metal cold against your palms, and strain your eyes into the mist. The officers move along the line, their voices low, almost swallowed by the damp air. Eyes front, they whisper as if the enemy might hear. You search for movement, a shadow in the fog, but all you see is the grey haze of morning, broken only by the occasional crater, filled with stagnant water that reflects the sky like a dull mirror. The stand-to ends, and you slide back into the trench, your breath catching in your throat, your heart still pounding from the weight of waiting. The day stretches out, slow and heavy. You spend it working, because idleness is a luxury you can't afford. The trench needs constant repair. Sandbags slump under the rain, planks rot, and the walls collapse in places, spilling earth into the walkway. You haul sandbags, your hands chafed raw, your back aching under the weight. You shovel mud, the spade sinking into the ground with a wet, sucking sound. Sometimes you're sent to fetch supplies, rations, ammunition, rolls of barbed wire that snag your sleeves and leave rust stains on your hands. The work is exhausting, but it keeps you warm, keeps your mind from wandering too far. You've learned to focus on the task at hand, on the rhythm of lifting, carrying, digging. It's a small rebellion against the chaos, a way to carve order out of the mud. When you're not working, you eat, though the food is barely sustenance. Breakfast might be a tin of bully beef, its fatty texture clinging to your tongue, or a hard biscuit that crumbles into dust when you bite it. If you're lucky, there's a thin stew ladled from a pot that's never quite clean. The food is always cold, the bread often nibbled by rats before it reaches you. The rats are everywhere, skittering along the trench at night, their eyes glinting in the dark like tiny, malevolent stars. They're bold, stealing crumbs from your pack, gnawing at the edges of your kit. You've seen them scamper across a sleeping man's chest, their claws clicking against his buttons. You hate them, but you've learned to live with them, just as you've learned to live with the lice that crawl through your hair, leaving trails of itching welts across your scalp and neck. You scratch until your skin is raw, but it's no use. The lice are as much a part of the trench as the mud. Sleep is a fleeting thing, stolen in moments when the shelling stops. You lean against the trench wall, your helmet tipped over your eyes, and try to rest. The dugouts are cramped, damp and cold, their air thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and candle smoke. You share the space with other men, their snores mingling with the drip of water from the ceiling. You've learned to sleep sitting up, your knees drawn to your chest, your rifle propped beside you. Dreams, when they come, are fragments of home afield of green, a warm kitchen, a voice calling your name. But they're interrupted by the whistle of a shell, the shout of an officer, the sudden jolt of your own fear. You wake with a start, your heart racing, and for a moment, you forget where you are. Then the trench reminds you the mud, the cold, the weight of it all. The shells are a constant presence, their sound as familiar as your own heartbeat. They come without warning, a high-pitched whistle that cuts through the air before the ground shakes with their impact. Dirt rains down, clogging your eyes and mouth, and you duck into a dugout, pressing yourself against the wall. The barrage might last minutes or hours, each explosion a reminder of how close death lingers. You've seen what a shell can do, how it turns earth to chaos, how it leaves men broken, their lives spilling into the mud. You don't dwell on it. You can't. Instead, you count the seconds between blasts, not because it helps, but because it's something to do, a way to anchor yourself in the noise. The trench is not just a place, it's a world unto itself. A narrow strip of earth where time slows and the outside fades. You've forgotten what it's like to walk on dry ground, to sleep in a bed, to breathe air that doesn't carry the scent of decay. But there's an intimacy here, a bond forged in the shared struggle. You know the men around you better than you know yourself, their habits, their fears, their stories. There's Private Du Bois, who hums a tune from his village when he thinks no one's listening. There's Corporal Leclerc, who keeps a photograph of his daughter tucked inside his helmet. You share everything: rations, tobacco, silence. You've laughed together over a stale joke, sat together through a bombardment, held each other's gaze when words weren't enough. The French trenches at Verdun are different from others. You've heard about. They're utilitarian, built for survival rather than comfort. The walls are rough, the dugouts shallow, the sandbags often patched with whatever fabric can be spared. You've heard the Germans build stronger trenches, with concrete bunkers and even electric lights in some sectors. The British, too, are said to take more care, reinforcing their trenches with sturdy planks and wire netting. But here, at Verdun, it's all mud and necessity. You've carved a small shelf into the trench wall for your kit: a tin cup, a spoon. A letter from home you've read so many times the paper is soft as cloth. These small acts of defiance, these claims to order, keep you grounded. The rain is your constant companion, a steady drizzle that soaks your greatcoat and chills your bones. You wrap it tighter, but the cold is relentless, seeping into your joints, making your fingers stiff as you fumble with your rifle. You've heard of trench foot, the way it turns toes black and numb, and you try to keep your feet dry, changing socks when you can, rubbing them to keep the blood flowing. But the mud is everywhere, creeping into every fold of fabric, every crack in your skin. You've seen men limp, their faces grey with pain, and you know it could be you next. You don't talk about it. You don't talk about a lot of things. Instead, you focus on the small tasks: cleaning your rifle, writing a letter, sipping cold tea from a dented mug. These are the rhythms of your life, the steady beats that carry you through the days. And yet, there are moments when the trench feels almost alive, pulsing with the quiet strength of the men who share it. You've seen a soldier share his last cigarette, the glow of it a tiny defiance against the dark. You've heard men sing, their voices low and rough, carrying tunes from home that make your chest ache. You've watched as a comrade carves his initials into a plank, a small claim to existence in a place that feels like it's trying to erase you. These moments, fleeting as they are, remind you that you're not alone. The trench is a crucible, forging bonds that words can't capture. You endure because they endure, because the rhythm of your life is their rhythm too. A shared pulse of survival in a world of mud and rain. The trench stretches before you, a narrow ribbon of mud and shadow, its walls pressing close as the rain continues its endless patter. You've been at Verdun for weeks now, maybe months. Time blurs in the damp, grey haze of 1916. The air is heavy, carrying the familiar sense of wet earth, rust, and the faint, acrid tang of something you've learned not to dwell on. Your greatcoat, still sodden from yesterday's drizzle, clings to your shoulders, its weight a constant reminder of the cold that seeps into your bones. You shift your rifle, its strap digging into your shoulder, and listen to the sounds of the trench: the low murmur of voices, the squelch of boots in mud, the distant rumble of shells. This is your world, a place where survival is measured in small acts, where the rhythm of your life is the rhythm of endurance. Fear is a quiet companion here, always present, though you rarely speak its name. It lingers in the tightness of your chest, the way your hands clench when the artillery falls silent, signaling something worse might be coming. Of all the threats in the trench, gas attacks are the ones that haunt you most. The cry of gas cuts through the air like a blade, sharp and urgent, sending you scrambling for your mask. The mask is a clumsy thing, a tangle of rubber and canvas that smells of chemicals and stale sweat. You fumble with the straps, your fingers stiff from the cold, your breath catching as you pull it over your face. The world narrows to the fogged glass of the eyepieces, the muffled sound of your own breathing, the weight of the filter against your mouth. You've been drilled on this, every soldier has, but the panic never quite fades. The gas comes in different forms, each with its own terror. chlorine gas is a greenish cloud, its sickly sweet smell burning your throat if you're too slow with the mask. You've seen men caught without one, their hands clawing at their chests, their gasps ragged and desperate. Mustard gas is subtler, creeping in with a faint garlic-like odor, but its effects linger. It blisters the skin, the eyes, the lungs, leaving men in agony for days. You check your mask daily, running your fingers along the seams, inspecting the filter for tears. A single flaw could be fatal, and you know it. When the gas clears, you pull the mask off, the air cool against your sweat-damp skin. But the fear stays with you, a shadow that follows you through the trench. Shell shock is another spectre, one that doesn't announce itself with a whistle or a cloud. You've seen it in the men around you, men who were once farmers, shopkeepers, boys barely out of school. Their hands tremble, their eyes stare at nothing, their voices fall silent. The officers call it shell shock, but you've heard whispers of other names: nervous exhaustion, cowardice, though you know that last one isn't true. You've felt it yourself, the way your heart races after a bombardment, the way your dreams are filled with the scream of shells and the faces of men who didn't make it. You've seen a comrade sit motionless for hours, his hands gripping his knees, his mind somewhere far beyond the trench. You don't judge him, you can't. You've felt the weight of the noise, the endless roar of artillery that shakes the earth and rattles your thoughts. The shells come day and night, their rhythm unpredictable. Sometimes they fall in a steady barrage, each explosion a hammer against the ground, sending dirt cascading into the trench. Other times, they're sporadic, a single blast shattering the silence, leaving you tense and waiting for the next. You've learned to read the sounds: the high whistle of a light shell, the deeper roar of a heavy one. You duck into a dugout, pressing yourself against the damp wall, and count the seconds, not because it helps, but because it's something to hold on to. The dugouts offer little comfort, low, cramped. Their air thick with the smell of earth and unwashed bodies, but they're a refuge, a place to wait out the storm. You've seen what a direct hit can do, how it turns a trench into a grave, but you try not to think about it. You focus on the small things: the weight of your helmet, the texture of the sandbag under your hand, the sound of rain dripping from the dugout's roof. In the midst of this, there are stories that linger, tales that drift through the trench like smoke. You've heard of the Christmas truce back in 1914, before you arrived at Verdun. It's spoken of in hushed tones, a memory that feels like a dream. They say men from both sides, British, French, German, climbed out of their trenches not to fight, but to meet in no man's land. They shared cigarettes, swapped stories, even sang carols under a sky pricked with stars. You imagine it now, standing in your muddy trench, the silence unbroken by shells, the air filled with voices raised in song. It's a melancholy thought, a reminder of a time when the war felt less bitter, when humanity flickered briefly in the darkness. By 1916, such moments are rare, the war too entrenched to heavy with loss. But the story stays with you, a fragile thread of hope that you tuck away, like a letter from home. To endure, you turn to small rituals, acts that carve meaning out of the chaos. Letters are your lifeline, thin sheets of paper that carry the scent of another world. You write them in the dim light of a dugout, your pencil scratching across damp pages, your words careful and measured. You tell your family the food is tolerable, the weather bearable. You don't mention the man who died beside you yesterday, his hand reaching for yours as his breath faded. You don't mention the mud that clings to everything, the rats that steal your bread, the fear that wakes you in the night. Instead, you write of small things: a bird you saw perched on the barbed wire, a joke shared over a cold cup of tea. When a letter arrives from home, you read it again and again, the paper softening under your touch, the words a bridge to a life you can barely remember. Alcohol is another refuge, though it's scarce and often rough. A bottle of cheap wine, passed between you and your mates, dulls the edge of fear, warms the chill in your bones. You sip it slowly, savoring the burn, the way it loosens the tightness in your chest. Sometimes there's rum, doled out by the officers before a patrol or a push. It's not enough to make you drunk, but it's enough to steady your hands, to quiet the thoughts that crowd your mind. You share it with the men around you, your laughter low and fleeting, a small defiance against the weight of the trench. Humor, too, is a weapon, wielded quietly but fiercely. You tell jokes, crude and familiar, the kind that would make your mother blush. You laugh not because they're funny, but because laughter is a rebellion, a way to push back against the despair. You mimic the officers' accents, poke fun at the rats, make up stories about the shells that never seem to stop. There's a private who's good at it, a weary man named Martin who can spin a tale about a rat stealing his biscuit like it's a grand adventure. You laugh until your sides ache, the sound swallowed by the trench, but for a moment, the world feels lighter. There are other ways to cope, small acts that anchor you. You carve your initials into a plank, the wood soft under your knife, a quiet claim to existence. You clean your rifle with a care that borders on reverence, scraping mud from the bolt, oiling the metal until it gleams. You pray, sometimes your lips moving silently as you clutch a rosary or a tattered photograph. Others curse, their voices low and bitter, railing against the mud, the war, the world. You do a bit of both, depending on the day, the hour, the weight of the moment. You've seen men whittle sticks into crude figures, etch drawings into the trench wall, hum tunes from home as they stare into the dark. These are the rhythms of survival, the small beats that keep you moving forward. The trench is a world of contrasts, a place where despair and camaraderie coexist. You know the men around you better than you know yourself, their habits, their fears, their dreams. There's Du Bois, who hums a lullaby from his village when he thinks no one's listening. There's Leclerc, who reads his daughter's letters until the ink blurs. You share everything: rations, tobacco, silence. You've sat with a comrade through a bombardment, your shoulders pressed together, your breaths synchronized. You've held a man as he wept, his body shaking with exhaustion, his words spilling out in a language you don't understand. You've watched another slip away, his hand gripping yours until it went slack, his eyes fixed on a sky he couldn't see. These moments bind you, not with glory, but with the quiet weight of shared endurance. The days blend together, each one a repetition of the last. You march, you dig, you wait. You listen to the chatter of machine guns, the cries of the wounded, the endless drip of rain. You try not to think about tomorrow, about the order that might send you over the top, into the teeth of no man's land. You focus on the small things, the weight of your pack, the taste of stale bread, the sound of a comrade's voice calling your name. These are the constants, the threads that hold you together when the world feels like it's unraveling. The trench is a place of slow erosion where the mud wears away at your boots, your body, your hope. But it's also a place of resilience where men find ways to endure, to carve out moments of humanity in the midst of chaos. You've seen a soldier share his last crust of bread, another offer a cigarette to a man he barely knows. You've heard laughter rise above the shelling, seen men hold each other up when the weight of it all becomes too much. This is the rhythm of your life now, a steady pulse of survival, carried forward one muddy step at a time. Imagine yourself standing in a vast hall, its walls adorned with gilded mirrors that catch the flicker of chandelier light. The air is heavy with the scent of polished wood, beeswax, and the faint trace of perfume lingering from a recent gathering. It's 1905, and you are in the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, the heart of the Russian Empire. The floors gleam under your feet, their intricate parquet patterns stretching into the distance. Outside, the Neva River flows quietly, its surface glinting under a pale winter sky. This is the world of the Romanovs, a dynasty that has ruled for 3 centuries, their power woven into the fabric of Russia itself. But beneath the opulence, there is a tension, a quiet creak in the foundations of their reign. The palace, for all its grandeur, feels like a stage where the final act of a long drama is beginning to unfold. You move through the halls, your footsteps muffled by thick carpets, the silence broken only by the soft ticking of a golden clock on a marble table. The Romanovs' son Nicholas II, Tsarina Alexandra, and their children are not here now, but their presence lingers. Portraits of their ancestors line the walls, their painted eyes watching over runes that feel both alive and frozen in time. The palace is a world unto itself, a labyrinth of salons and ballrooms where courtiers whisper and servants glide noiselessly, carrying silver trays of tea or folding linens with practiced precision. Yet, even here in this cocoon of luxury, you can sense the world outside pressing in a world of peasants toiling in frozen fields. of workers crowded into smoky factories, of murmurs growing louder with each passing year. Nicholas II, the Tsar, is a man who carries the weight of a crown he never truly wanted. He is not a king of grand gestures or bold reforms, but a quiet figure, formal and reserved, who believes his rule is ordained by God. You can picture him in his study, a small room compared to the palace's vastness, its walls lined with books and maps. He sits at a desk, his pen scratching across paper as he writes to his cousins in Europe, kings and queens, who still hold their thrones. His face is pale, his eyes tired, his mustache neatly trimmed. He is a man of routine, of family, of faith, but the world he governs is slipping beyond his grasp. You sense it in the way his advisors speak, their voices low and urgent, in the way telegrams pile up, each one carrying news of strikes, unrest, or distant wars. The Tsarina, Alexandra, is a figure of contrasts, devout, fiercely protective of her family, yet distrusted by the court and the people. You can imagine her in her private quarters, a room draped in soft lilac fabrics. Her favorite color. The air smells faintly of incense, and a small icon glows under the light of a candle. She kneels in prayer, her hands clasped tightly, her thoughts consumed by her son, Alexei, the heir whose fragile health binds her to a mystic named Rasputin. His influence is a shadow over the palace, a name whispered with unease by those who serve the Romanovs. Rasputin, with his unkempt beard and piercing eyes, is no ordinary advisor. He's a peasant, a self-proclaimed holy man, whose presence in the palace feels like a crack in the polished surface of imperial life. You can almost hear the courtiers' murmurs, their disapproval cloaked in careful words, as Alexandra turns to him for hope, for miracles, for salvation. The palace is a world of ritual, its rhythms as steady as the ticking of that golden clock. Each morning, servants light fires in ornate fireplaces, their embers casting a warm glow across rooms filled with velvet chairs and crystal vases. Meals are served on porcelain plates, the clink of silverware a constant sound in the dining halls. The Romanovs move through these routines with grace, but there is a stiffness to it, a sense that they are playing roles in a play that has gone on too long. You can picture Nicholas reviewing military reports, his brow furrowed as he reads of losses in a war with Japan, a conflict that has drained the empire's coffers and stirred discontent among the people. You can see Alexandra writing letters, her handwriting elegant but hurried, as she pleads for support from her German relatives, unaware of how her foreign birth fuels suspicion among her subjects. Outside the palace, the city of St. Petersburg hums with a different rhythm. You can imagine walking its streets, the cobblestones slick with frost, the air sharp with the smell of coal smoke and baking bread. Workers trudge to factories, their faces drawn, their hands chapped from the cold. Peasants newly arrived from the countryside crowd into tenements, their lives a stark contrast to the palace's splendor. You hear their voices, low and weary, speaking of bread shortages, of wages that barely sustain them, of a Tsar who seems distant, untouchable. The discontent is a quiet thing, not yet a roar, but it gathers strength in the shadows of the city, in the taverns and meeting halls where ideas of change take root. This unrest comes to a head on a winter day in January 1905, an event that will later be called Bloody Sunday. Picture yourself standing in a crowd outside the Winter Palace, your breath visible in the freezing air, your hands buried in the pockets of a threadbare coat. Thousands have gathered, workers and their families, clutching petitions and icons, their faces hopeful yet resolute. They've come to ask for better wages, shorter hours, a voice in their future. You hear their voices rise in a hymn, a solemn plea for Tsar's attention, their footsteps crunching in the snow as they march toward the palace square. They believe in Nicholas, in the idea of a fatherly Tsar who will hear them, who will care. But the response is not what they expect. You hear the crack of rifles, sharp and sudden, cutting through the hymn. The crowd stumbles, scatters, their voices turning to cries of confusion and fear. Soldiers, their faces grim under heavy helmets, fire into the mass of people. You don't see the details, the chaos is a blur of snow and smoke, but you feel the weight of it. The way lives are cut short, the way hope shatters against the cobblestones. The square empties, leaving behind only the silence of the fallen, their petitions trampled in the snow. The palace looms in the distance, its windows glowing, untouched by the tragedy unfolding at its gates. Bloody Sunday is a turning point, a crack in the foundation of the Romanovs' rule. You can imagine Nicholas in his study, his advisors bringing him the news, their voices low, their words careful. He is shaken, perhaps, but distant, unable to grasp the depth of the people's anger. He issues a statement, calling the event a tragedy, but he does not meet the petitioner's demands. Instead, he retreats further into the rituals of the palace, into the belief that his rule is divine, unchangeable. Alexandra, too, withdraws, her faith in Rasputin growing stronger as the world outside grows darker. The palace remains a world apart, its chandeliers gleaming, its clocks ticking. But the distance between the Romanovs and their people widens, a chasm that will only deepen with time. In the wake of Bloody Sunday, the empire stirs with demands for change. You can picture the meetings in St. Petersburg's smoky halls where intellectuals and workers debate the future. The Tsar, under pressure, agrees to reform a legislative body called the Duma, a faint gesture toward democracy. Imagine yourself in the Tauride Palace where the Duma convenes. Its halls less grand than the Winter Palace but alive with voices. The air smells of ink and dust, the benches filled with men in suits and peasant coats, their speeches echoing with hope and frustration. The Duma is meant to give the people a voice, to share the burden of governance. But it is a fragile thing, its powers limited, its sessions subject to the Tsar's will. You can see Nicholas attending the Duma's opening, his uniform pristine, his face composed but distant. He speaks of unity, of progress, but his words feel hollow like a script read too many times. The deputies, some bold, some cautious call for reforms, land for the peasants, rights for the workers, an end to autocracy. But Nicholas dissolves the Duma when its demands grow too loud. Its members sent back to their towns and villages, their hopes dimmed but not extinguished. You can feel the tension in the air, the sense that something is shifting, that the rhythm of the empire is faltering. The palace, for all its beauty, begins to feel like a relic, its walls holding the echoes of a dynasty that cannot adapt. You can imagine the Romanovs at dinner, the clink of silverware against porcelain, the soft murmur of their voices as they speak of their children, their faith, their duties. Nicholas reads reports of strikes, of soldiers returning from the war with Japan, their faces haunted by defeat. Alexandra writes to Rasputin, her letters filled with pleas for guidance, for miracles to save her son. The children Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia, and Alexei play in the palace gardens, their laughter a fleeting note of joy in a world growing heavier with each passing day. Outside, the empire groans under its own weight. You can walk the streets of St. Petersburg again, the air now sharper, the crowds larger, their voices edged with something new anger, yes, but also resolve. The factories hum with discontent, the countryside stirs with whispers of land reform, and the soldiers, weary from a lost war, begin to question their loyalty. The Romanovs, high in their palace, seem unaware of how close the storm is, how the ground beneath them is shifting. You can sense it, though, in the way the city feels, in the way the wind carries the faint sound of chants from distant streets. This is the rhythm of their lives now, a slow unraveling, each day a step closer to the edge. The Winter Palace, with its gilded halls and ticking clocks, is a world of illusion, a place where the Romanovs cling to tradition while the empire frays. You can feel the weight of it, the quiet tragedy of a dynasty that cannot see its own decline. The chandeliers still gleam, the servants still move silently, but the air is heavier now, thick with the scent of change, of a future that will not wait. The Winter Palace stands silent under a heavy sky, its golden spires dulled by the grey of St. Petersburg winter in 1917. Imagine yourself walking its corridors once more, the air cooler now, carrying the faint scent of frost and the lingering warmth of dying fires. The chandeliers still gleam, but their light feels dimmer, as if the palace itself senses the end approaching. The portraits of past Tsars watch from the walls, their painted gazes heavy with the weight of centuries. You can hear the distant hum of the city, no longer a murmur but a rising tide of voices, footsteps, and the clatter of discontent. The Romanovs, Nicholas, Alexandra, and their 5 children are still here, but their world is unraveling, thread by thread, like a tapestry worn thin by time. This is not a sudden fall, but a slow descent, a quiet erosion of a dynasty that once seemed eternal. It's February 1917, and the empire is breaking. Picture yourself standing in the streets of Petrograd as St. Petersburg is now called, the air sharp with the bite of winter and the acrid smell of coal smoke. The city is restless, its cobblestone streets crowded with workers, their faces gaunt from hunger, their coats threadbare against the cold. Red lines stretch around corners, women clutching shawls as they wait for rations that never come. You hear their voices, low at first, then growing louder chants of bread, and down with the Tsar. The war, now in its third year, has drained the empire. Soldiers return from the front, their eyes hollow, their loyalty frayed. Factories grind to a halt as strikes spread, the clatter of machinery replaced by the rhythm of protest. You can feel the tension, the way the city holds its breath. The February Revolution begins not with a single moment, but with a slow gathering of anger. Women, workers, soldiers, they march together, their footsteps echoing through the streets, their banners fluttering in the icy wind. You stand among them, your breath visible, your hands buried in your pockets, watching as the crowd swells. The police, their uniforms dark against the snow, try to hold the line. But the tide is too strong. Shots ring out, sharp and startling. But the crowd does not scatter. Instead, it surges forward, driven by a hunger that is not just for bread, but for change. The air smells of gunpowder and sweat, and you sense the shift, the moment when the empire's foundation cracks. Inside the Winter Palace, Nicholas is not present. He is at the front, with his armies, as are trying to lead a war that is slipping from his control. You can imagine him in a military tent, its canvas walls flapping in the wind, his desk cluttered with maps and telegrams. His face is pale, his eyes tired, his hands steady but uncertain as he reads reports of defeats, of soldiers deserting, of a capital in chaos. His advisors urge him to act, to return to Petrograd, but he hesitates, clinging to the belief that his divine right will hold the empire together. You can hear the scratch of his pen as he writes to Alexandra, his words formal yet tender, promising to return soon. But the distance between them, between the Tsar and his people, is now a chasm. Alexandra remains in the palace, her world narrowing to her children and her faith. Picture her in her mauve boudoir, the walls draped in soft fabrics, the air heavy with the scent of incense. She kneels before an icon, her hands clasped, her prayers fervent for her son Alexei, whose hemophilia binds her to Rasputin's influence. Rasputin is gone now, killed in December 1916 by nobles desperate to sever his hold over the court. You can imagine the moment of his death, not with vivid detail, but as a shadow passing a life extinguished in a basement. The news whispered through the palace like a cold wind. Alexandra mourns him, her grief private but consuming, her faith unshaken. She writes to Nicholas her letters filled with urgency, urging him to be strong, to trust in God's will. But the court whispers of her German birth, of her isolation, of Ekaterina who cannot see the storm gathering outside. The February Revolution overtakes Petrograd with a quiet inevitability. You can see the soldiers, once loyal to the Tsar, joining the crowds, their rifles slung over their shoulders, their faces weary but resolute. The Duma, that fragile experiment in reform, tries to hold order, but its authority is crumbling. A provisional government forms, a patchwork of liberals and moderates. Meeting in the Tauride Palace, its halls filled with the smell of ink and nervous sweat. You can picture the deputies, their voices hoarse from debate, their papers scattered as they argue over how to govern a fracturing empire. They call for Nicholas to abdicate, to step aside for the sake of Russia. The message reaches him at Pskov, where his train is stranded, the tracks blocked by striking workers. Imagine Nicholas in the train carriage, its windows fogged with frost, the air heavy with the scent of tobacco and damp wool. He sits alone, his uniform immaculate, but his shoulders slumped. His generals and aides stand before him, their faces grim, their words careful but unyielding. The empire is collapsing. They tell him the army will not fight for him, the people will not wait. You can see him sign the abdication manifesto, his hand steady but slow, the pen scratching across the paper as he relinquishes a throne that has defined his life. He names his son Alexei as successor, then reconsiders, choosing his brother Michael, fearing for his son's fragile health. But Michael, too, refuses the crown, and the Romanov dynasty, 3 centuries old, slips quietly into the past. The palace is no longer a home but a memory. You can imagine the Romanovs leaving Tsarskoye Selo, their summer residence, where the gardens once echoed with their children's laughter. The air is warm now, the spring of 1917 bringing a faint scent of lilacs, but the mood is heavy. Servants pack trunks with quiet efficiency, their hands folding silk dresses and silver brushes, their eyes avoiding the family they've served for years. Nicholas, Alexandra, their children Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia, and Alexei board a train. Its destination uncertain. You can hear the clatter of the wheels, the whistle of steam, the soft murmur of the children's voices as they try to understand what is happening. The palace recedes, its spires fading into the distance, a relic of a world that no longer exists. Exile begins in Tobolsk, a remote town in Siberia, where the Romanovs are housed in a modest governor's mansion. Picture yourself standing outside, the air sharp with the scent of pine and river water, the sky wide and endless above the wooden houses. The mansion is simple compared to the Winter Palace, its rooms plain, its floors creaking underfoot. The family settles into a new rhythm, one of quiet routine. You can see Nicholas chopping wood, his breath visible in the cold, his hands calloused from work he was never trained to do. Alexandra sits by a window, her embroidery needle moving slowly, her eyes distant. The children read books, play cards, write in their diaries, their voices soft but unbroken. Servants, fewer now, cook simple meals, borscht, bread, tea that smells filling the house with a faint warmth. Life in Tobolsk is austere but bearable. You can imagine the family gathered in the evenings, the glow of a single lamp casting shadows on the walls. They pray together, their voices rising in familiar hymns, their faith a thread that binds them. Nicholas reads history books, his mind lingering on the reigns of his ancestors. Alexandra writes letters, though few are sent. Her words a record of a life slipping away. The children, still young, find small joys, a snowball fight, a game of chess, a story shared before bed. But the air grows heavier with each passing month, the guards outside more numerous, their faces harder. The revolution is not over. It is shifting, turning inward, and the Romanovs are caught in its current. By April 1918, the Bolsheviks, now in power, move the family to Yekaterinburg, to a house known as Ipatiev House. Imagine yourself standing before it, a two-story building with whitewashed walls, its windows boarded up, its garden overgrown. The air smells of dust and neglect, the street quiet but watchful. Inside, the rooms are cramped, the furniture plain, the walls bare except for a few icons. You can hear the creak of floorboards as the family moves through their days, their world reduced to a handful of rooms. The guards, loyal to the Bolsheviks, watch closely, their boots heavy on the stairs, their voices curt. The Romanovs are prisoners now, their titles stripped, their future uncertain. You can picture Nicholas writing in his diary, his entries brief but steady, noting the weather, the meals, the small routines that hold his family together. Alexandra prays, her hands clutching a rosary, her faith unshaken even as the walls close in. The children adapt, their resilience a quiet defiant. Solga reads poetry. Tatiana organizes the household, Maria and Anastasia play games, Alexei, frail but spirited, listens to stories. The air is thick with tension, but there are moments of tenderness, a shared glance, a soft word, a hand resting on a shoulder. These are the rhythms of their lives now, a fragile pulse in a world that no longer wants them. The end comes in July 1918, in the basement of Ipatiev House. You don't need to see the details. The moment is a shadow, a life fading into silence. Imagine standing outside, the night air cool, the stars hidden by clouds. You hear a muffled sound, a brief disturbance, then nothing. The house is still, its windows dark, its doors locked. The Romanovs are gone, their story ending not with a grand flourish but with a quiet, inevitable close. The empire they once ruled is fracturing, its pieces scattered across a land that will never be the same. You can step back now, away from the house, away from Yekaterinburg, back to the Winter Palace in your mind. The halls are empty, the chandeliers unlit, the clocks silent. The portraits remain, but their eyes seem to look past you into a Natasha. The air is still, heavy with the scent of dust and time. This is the end of the Romanovs, a dynasty that fell not with a crash, but with a whisper, carried away by the tide of history. Imagine yourself standing in a bustling marketplace in Constantinople. The year is 1914, and the air is alive with the hum of voices, the clink of coins, and the scent of spices carried on a warm breeze. The city, now called Istanbul by some, stretches before you, a tapestry of domed mosques and minarets piercing the sky, their silhouettes softened by the golden haze of late afternoon. You hear the call to prayer, a melodic thread weaving through the chatter of merchants hawking silk, saffron and olives. The cobblestone streets are worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, and the Bosphorus glitters in the distance, its waters catching the light like a mirror. This is the heart of the Ottoman Empire, a realm that has spanned 3 continents for over 600 years. Yet, beneath the vibrancy, there is a stillness, a quiet sense that the rhythm of this world is slowing, that the empire is fading, not with a roar, but with a sigh. You walk through the market, your senses filled with the texture of this ancient city. The air carries the sharp tang of roasting chestnuts, the earthy scent of freshly ground coffee, and the faint saltiness of the sea. Stalls are piled high with pomegranates, their ruby skins gleaming, and bolts of cloth dyed in hues of indigo and crimson. Merchants call out in a dozen languages: Turkish, Arabic, Greek, Armenian, their voices blending into a chorus that feels both eternal and fragile. You pass a coffee house, its wooden benches filled with men sipping from tiny cups, their conversations low, their eyes scanning newspapers that speak of war in Europe. The Ottoman Empire, once a titan that stretched from Vienna to Baghdad, is now called the sick man of Europe, its borders shrinking, its power waning. But here, in the market, life continues, its rhythm steady as if the empire might endure forever. The Ottoman Empire in 1914 is a shadow of its former self, yet it is still vast. A mosaic of peoples, languages, and faiths held together by a fragile thread. You can imagine the Sultan, Mehmed V, in the Topkapi Palace, its courtyards lush with roses, its halls adorned with intricate tiles that shimmer in the candlelight. The palace is a world of whispers where viziers and courtiers move with measured steps, their robes rustling softly. Mehmed is a figurehead, his power overshadowed by the Young Turks, a group of reformers who have seized control in a bloodless coup years earlier. You can picture them in a dimly lit chamber, their voices urgent but hushed, poring over maps and telegrams. They speak of alliances, of Germany's promises, of a war that could restore the empire's glory or break it entirely. The decision to enter the Great War comes in November 1914, a choice that feels both inevitable and reckless. You can imagine standing on the shores of the Bosphorus, watching as Ottoman warships, their hulls painted grey, slip into the Black Sea under a moonless sky. The air is cool, carrying the scent of salt and tar, and you hear the creak of ropes, the low commands of officers. The ships fire on Russian ports, a bold act that draws the empire into the war alongside Germany and Austro-Hungary. The decision is not the Sultan's alone, but that of the Young Turks, led by men like Enver Pasha, whose ambition burns brighter than their caution. You can sense the weight of it, the way this choice ripples through the empire, stirring both hope and dread. The war's first major test for the Ottomans comes at Gallipoli, a narrow peninsula guarding the Dardanelles, the gateway to Constantinople. Picture yourself standing on its rocky cliffs in early 1915, the wind sharp against your face, the sea below a restless expanse of blue and white. The air smells of salt and thyme, and the hills are dotted with olive trees, their leaves silver in the sunlight. A light forces British, French, Australian, New Zealand land on the beaches, their ships crowding the horizon, their guns roaring as they aim to seize the strait and open a path to Russia. The Ottoman soldiers, entrenched on the heights, fight with a quiet ferocity, their rifles steady, their faces weathered by sun and wind. You can hear the crack of gunfire, the distant thud of shells, the shouts of men carried on the breeze. The Gallipoli campaign is a grinding, relentless struggle, not unlike the trenches of Verdun. You can imagine the Ottoman soldiers in their dugouts, their uniforms patched, their boots caked with dust. The air is thick with the smell of gunpowder and sweat, the ground littered with spent cartridges and broken equipment. The soldiers are a mix of men from across the empire: Turks, Arabs, Kurds. Their languages different but their purpose shared. They eat simple meals of bread and lentils, their water rationed, their eyes scanning the horizon for the next wave of attackers. The officers move among them, their voices calm but firm, urging them to hold the line. You can feel the weight of their resolve, the way they cling to this strip of land, knowing it is the Empire's shield. The battles stretch on for months, each day a repetition of the last. You can picture the soldiers at dawn, standing in their trenches, their breath visible in the cool morning air. The Allied troops push forward, their bayonets gleaming, their faces set with determination. The Ottomans respond with machine guns and artillery, their fire sweeping across the beaches, turning the sand into a chaotic tableau. You don't linger on the fallen, but you sense their presence, the way lives are cut short, their stories left unfinished. The air grows heavier, the scent of blood and earth mingling with the sea breeze. But the soldiers endure, their rhythm one of survival, of holding ground against an enemy that seems endless. A young officer, Mustafa Kemal, emerges as a key figure at Gallipoli, his name whispered among the troops with a quiet reverence. You can imagine him moving through the trenches, his uniform dusty but precise, his eyes sharp with focus. He is not yet Ataturk, the founder of modern Turkey, but you can sense the strength in him, the way he rallies his men with words that are both commanding and calm. He knows the peninsula, its hills and ravines, and he uses this knowledge to outmaneuver the Allies. You can hear his voice, steady and clear, ordering his men to hold their positions, to fight not for glory, but for the land beneath their feet. The soldiers trust him, their hands steady on their rifles, their resolve sharpened by his presence. The Gallipoli campaign ends in January 1916, with the Allies withdrawing, their ships slipping away under cover of darkness. You can stand on the cliffs again, the wind quieter now. The beach is empty except for the remnants of war-broken boats, scattered supplies, the faint outlines of trenches. The Ottoman victory is a rare moment of triumph, but it comes at a cost. The empire is stretched thin, its resources drained, its people weary. You can feel the weight of it, the way the victory is less a celebration than a pause, a brief respite in a war that is far from over. The soldiers return to their homes, if they have them, or move to other fronts, their faces marked by the strain of survival. Back in Constantinople, the city continues its rhythm, but the pulse is weaker. You can walk the market again, the stalls less full now, the merchant's voice is quieter. The war has taken its toll, food is scarce, prices high, and the air carries a new scent, one of uncertainty. The mosques still stand, their domes gleaming under the sun, but the call to prayer feels heavier, as if it carries the weight of an empire's fading glory. You can imagine the people gathering in coffee houses, their newspapers filled with reports of battles in Mesopotamia, in the Caucasus, in Arabia. They speak of the war, of the young Turks, of a future that feels both distant and pressing. The Ottoman Empire is a vast, sprawling realm, but it seems a fraying. You can sense it in the way the provinces grow restless, in the way voices in Damascus and Baghdad speak of independence, of a world without sultans. The young Turks, once reformers, now cling to power, their vision of a modern empire clashing with the realities of war. You can picture them in their offices, the air thick with cigarette smoke, their maps marked with losses. They speak of alliances with Germany, of new campaigns, but their words lack the confidence of earlier years. The empire is not just fighting a war, it is fighting time, fighting the slow decay of a system that cannot hold. The cultural heart of the empire remains, though, in its architecture, its music, its traditions. You can imagine standing in the Hagia Sophia, its vast dome soaring above you, its mosaics glowing in the dim light. The air is cool, scented with incense and history, the walls whispering of emperors and sultans who have prayed here. You can hear the soft notes of an oud in a nearby courtyard, its melody mournful yet soothing, a reminder of the empire's richness. The markets, the mosques, the palaces, they are the legacy of a world that has endured for centuries. But they are also relics, their beauty tinged with the sadness of decline. This is the rhythm of the Ottoman twilight, a slow fading of light, a quiet unraveling of an empire. You can feel it in the air, in the way the city moves, in the way the people carry on despite the weight of change. The war is not just a battle against enemies, but a battle against time, against the inevitability of an end. The markets still hum, the Bosphorus still glitters, but the empire is slipping, its story drawing to a close, not with a crash, but with a whisper carried on the wind. Picture yourself in a desert village, the air warm and dry, carrying the scent of dust and sun-baked stone. It's 1916, and you're standing in the Arabian Peninsula, where the horizon stretches endlessly, broken only by the faint outline of date palms swaying in the breeze. The sky is a deep, unyielding blue, and the sand beneath your feet shifts softly, whispering of a world older than empires. This is the land of the Bedouin, of ancient trade routes, of a people whose lives have long been woven into the fabric of the Ottoman Empire. But now, that fabric is fraying, its threads pulled loose by war and the quiet stirrings of rebellion. The empire, once a vast tapestry of cultures, is unraveling, and here in the desert, you can feel the weight of its twilight. The Arab Revolt begins in the summer of 1916, a spark that grows into a flame across the sands. You can imagine the tribes gathering, their robes billowing in the wind, their voices low but resolute as they speak of freedom. The Ottoman rulers, distant in Constantinople, have governed these lands for centuries. Their tax collectors and governors a constant presence. But the war has strained the empire, its attention turned to distant fronts, its grip loosening on the provinces. You hear the clatter of camel hooves, the creak of leather saddles, as Bedouin warriors ride under the banner of Sharif Hussein of Mecca. His call for independence echoes through the desert, carried by messengers on horseback, their words stirring hearts in villages and oases. Among these rebels is a figure who seems almost out of place, a British officer named T.E. Lawrence, later known as Lawrence of Arabia. Picture him riding across the dunes, his cocky uniform dusted with sand, his face weathered by the sun. His blue eyes are sharp, his voice calm but persuasive as he meets with tribal leaders, offering British support, gold, weapons, promises of a future without Ottoman rule. You can see him in a tent, its canvas walls flapping gently, the air thick with the scent of coffee and burning wood. Maps are spread across a woven rug, their edges curling, as Lawrence and the Arab leaders plan their strikes. The rhythm of their rebellion is one of movement, of swift raids on Ottoman railways, of explosions that shatter the desert's silence, their echoes fading into the night. You can stand at the edge of a railway, its iron tracks gleaming under the moonlight, stretching across the desert like a scar. The air is cool now, carrying the faint scent of creosote and metal. The rebels strike with precision, their dynamite tearing through the tracks, sending plumes of dust into the sky. Ottoman garrisons, small and isolated, are caught off guard, their soldiers weary from years of war. You hear the crack of rifles, the shouts of men, but the conflict feels distant, almost dreamlike. A series of fleeting moments in a vast, unchanging landscape. The Arabs fight not for conquest but for a vision of their own. A nation free from the Sultan's shadow, a dream that feels both bold and fragile. The revolt spreads from Mecca to Damascus, its momentum carrying the tribes toward a future they can scarcely imagine. You can picture the cities they capture, their ancient walls standing firm against the desert wind. In Damascus, the air smells of jasmine and baked bread, the markets bustling despite the war. The Ottoman banners with their crescent and star are lowered, replaced by the colors of the Arab Revolt. You sense the shift, the way the empire's hold slips, its authority fading like ink on a weathered page. The rebels move with purpose, their footsteps light but determined, their voices rising in songs of victory that echo through the streets. Yet, even in triumph, there is a melancholy, a sense that the world they are creating will not be as simple as they hope. But the war is not just a story of rebellion, it is also one of profound loss. The Ottoman Empire, stretched thin by conflict, faces a tragedy that will mark its history forever: the Armenian genocide. Picture yourself in a small Armenian village in eastern Anatolia, the year still 1915, before the revolt consumes the desert. The air is crisp, scented with pine and the faint smoke of hearth fires. The village is quiet, its stone houses nestled among hills, its people farmers, artisans, families living lives shaped by tradition. But there is a tension here, a fear that lingers in the glances exchanged by neighbors, in the hushed conversations behind closed doors. The Ottoman government, led by the Young Turks, sees the Armenians, a Christian minority, as a threat in a time of war. Rumors of disloyalty, fueled by the empire's paranoia, lead to orders that will change the course of history. You don't witness the details, but you feel the weight of what follows. A shadow passing over the land, lives uprooted, communities scattered, entire villages are emptied, their people sent on long marches across mountains and deserts, their footsteps heavy with exhaustion. The air grows heavy with dust and sorrow, the landscape marked by the silence of those who will not return. This is not a story of vivid horror, but of a profound absence, a wound in the fabric of the empire that will never fully heal. The consequences linger, felt in the quiet of abandoned homes, in the archives where letters and records lie untouched. You can imagine standing in one of these villages years later, the wind carrying the scent of wildflowers and decay, the houses crumbling under the weight of time. The tragedy is a quiet one, its pain carried in the memories of survivors, in the stories whispered by those who fled. The Ottoman Empire, already faltering, bears the weight of this loss, its moral foundation weakened, its legacy stained. You sense the solemnity of it, the way history pauses to mark the cost of war, of fear, of decisions made in the heat of conflict. By 1918, the empire is crumbling. You can return to Constantinople, the city now weary, its markets quieter, its people worn by years of war. The air smells of salt and exhaustion, the Bosphorus still flowing, but its waters carrying a heavier burden. The Allies are victorious, their terms harsh in the armistice that ends the war. The Ottoman Empire, once a titan, is carved up, its provinces divided among foreign powers. You can imagine the negotiations in distant halls, the scratch of pens on treaties, the voices of diplomats shaping a new map. The Sultan, Mehmed VI, is a shadow of his ancestors, his power gone, his palace a relic. The Caliphate, the spiritual heart of the empire, is dissolved in 1924, a final note in the empire's long song. Picture yourself in Ankara, a new capital rising from the ashes of war. The air is crisp, scented with dust and ambition as Mustafa Kemal, now Ataturk, builds a modern nation. You can see him addressing crowds, his voice steady, his vision clear, a Turkey that looks forward, not back. The mosques remain, their minarets piercing the sky, but the call to prayer is now in Turkish, a symbol of change. The old imperial robes are set aside, replaced by suits and hats, the rhythm of the past giving way to a new beat. You sense the shift, the way the empire's legacy is both preserved and transformed, its traditions woven into a nation that seeks to redefine itself. The architectural legacy of the Ottoman Empire endures, a testament to its grandeur. Imagine standing in the Süleymani Mosque, its dome soaring above you, its arches framing the light. The air is cool, scented with incense and history, the tiles gleaming with patterns of blue and gold. You can run your fingers along the stone, feeling the weight of centuries, the hands that shaped this place. The palaces, too, remain top copy, Dolmabok, their courtyards quiet now, their halls filled with the echoes of a vanished world. You can walk their gardens, the scent of roses lingering, the fountains murmuring softly. These are the remnants of an empire, its beauty a quiet reminder of what was, its silence a testament to what has passed. The markets of Istanbul still hum, though their rhythm is different now. You can walk their alleys, the air rich with the scent of spices and leather, the voices of merchants calling out in a language that carries the past into the present. The Bosphorus flows on, its waters catching the light, its surface unbroken by the weight of history. The empire is gone, its story fading into archives, into the stones of its mosques, into the memories of its people. You can feel the melancholy of it, the way an empire slips away, not with a crash, but with a whisper, carried on the wind across a city that will always bear its mark. This is the Ottoman twilight, a slow fading of light, a quiet end to a world that shaped continents. The desert sands, the city streets, the ancient mosques, they hold the empire's story, its triumphs and its tragedies, its beauty and its loss. You can step back now, away from the markets, away from the palaces, into the stillness of a night where the stars shine softly, and the past settles gently around you like dust falling in an empty room. Imagine yourself seated in a Viennese cafe, the air warm with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and buttery pastries, the faint clink of porcelain cups mingling with the hum of conversation. It's 1913, and Vienna is alive, its streets aglow with gaslights, its boulevards lined with grand buildings of marble and gold. You're at a small table near a window, the glass cool against your hand, offering a view of passers-by in elegant coats and feathered hats. A violinist in the corner plays a soft waltz, its notes drifting like leaves on a gentle breeze. The cafe is a world of its own, a haven of warmth and chatter, but beyond its doors. The Austro-Hungarian Empire is stirring. It seems strained by the weight of a changing world. This is the Habsburg realm, a glittering mosaic of nations, held together by tradition and bureaucracy, yet poised on the edge of collapse. The cafe is a microcosm of Vienna's charm, its walls adorned with gilded mirrors, its tables crowded with intellectuals, artists, and aristocrats. You can smell the sweetness of apfelstrudel dusted with powdered sugar, and hear the rustle of newspapers as patrons debate politics, art, and the latest scandals. The air carries a hint of cigar smoke, mingling with the fragrance of roses in a vase nearby. Outside, horse-drawn carriages clatter over cobblestones, their drivers calling out in German, Hungarian, Czech, or one of the empire's many tongues. Vienna is the heart of the Habsburg world, a city where music, ideas, and ambition intertwine, but also where the cracks in the empire's foundation are beginning to show. You can wander the Ringstrasse, Vienna's grand boulevard, its wide expanse lined with palaces, theatres, and museums. The buildings are a testament to Habsburg wealth, their facades carved with intricate details, their windows gleaming in the autumn light. The air is crisp, scented with fallen leaves and the faint smoke of chestnut vendors. You pass the Hofburg Palace, its spires piercing the sky, its courtyards bustling with courtiers and guards in crisp uniforms. This is the seat of Emperor Franz Joseph, who has ruled for over 6 decades. His presence a constant in a world that feels increasingly unsteady. You can imagine him in his study, an old man with a white beard, his desk cluttered with papers, his eyes weary but resolute. He is the embodiment of tradition, a monarch who believes in the divine right of kings, yet governs an empire fracturing under the weight of its own diversity. The Habsburg Empire is a patchwork of nations: Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Slovaks, Poles, Croats, and more, each with its own language, culture, and grievances. You can sense the tension as you walk Vienna's streets, where German is the language of the elite, but other tongues echo in the markets and taverns. In a Czech neighborhood, you hear the lilt of a folk song, its melody mournful, its words calling for recognition. In a Hungarian cafe, you catch snippets of conversation, voices raised in debate over autonomy. The empire is held together by bureaucracy, by the emperor's authority, but the bonds are fraying. You can feel it in the air, a restlessness that hums beneath the city's elegance, a quiet pulse of discontent that grows stronger with each passing year. Vienna's cultural life, though, is a dazzling distraction. Picture yourself in the Staatsoper, the grand opera house, its chandeliers casting a golden glow over velvet seats. The air smells of perfume and polished wood, and the orchestra tunes its instruments, their notes rising in a soft crescendo. You hear the soaring voice of a soprano singing a Mozart aria, her melody weaving through the auditorium like a thread of light. The audience nobles in evening gowns, intellectuals in spectacles, artists with untamed hair listens in rapt silence, their applause a gentle ripple when the curtain falls. Vienna is a city of music where Strauss waltzes and Schubert lieder fill the air, their rhythms a counterpoint to the empire's slow decline. The intellectual scene is equally vibrant. You can sit in another cafe, perhaps the Café Central, where the air is thick with the scent of coffee and ink. The tables are crowded with writers, philosophers, and scientists, their voices weaving a tapestry of ideas. You hear Sigmund Freud's name mentioned, his theories of the mind sparking heated debates. Artists like Gustav Klimt are discussed, their bold paintings swirls of gold and color challenging the old order. You can imagine picking up a newspaper, its pages filled with essays on socialism, nationalism, and the future of Europe. The air hums with possibility, but also with uncertainty, as if Vienna knows its golden age is slipping away. The court, too, is a world of opulence, though it carries a weight of formality. Imagine yourself at a Habsburg ball, held in the Hofburg's grand ballroom. The air is warm, scented with wax from 1,000 candles, their light reflecting off mirrored walls. Women in silk gowns glide across the floor, their jewels catching the light, while men in tails and sashes bow with practiced grace. A waltz begins, its rhythm slow and hypnotic, drawing couples into a dance that feels timeless. You can see Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne, standing at the edge of the room, his face stern, his eyes scanning the crowd. He is not like his uncle, Franz Joseph. He is a man of reform, of ideas, but his presence carries a tension, a sense that his future is tied to the empire's fate. Franz Ferdinand is a figure of contrasts, formal yet forward-thinking, a man who dreams of restructuring the empire into a federation of equal states. You can imagine him in his private study, its walls lined with maps and books, the air heavy with the scent of leather and ink. He writes letters, his pen scratching softly, outlining plans to grant autonomy to the empire's many peoples. His ideas are bold, but they are met with resistance from the court, from the bureaucracy, from those who cling to the old ways. You can sense his frustration, the way he paces the room, his steps muffled by a thick carpet, his mind wrestling with a future he may not live to see. The court is a world of ritual, its rhythms as precise as a clock. You can picture the emperor at a state dinner, his uniform adorned with medals, his voice low and measured as he speaks to diplomats. The table is set with silver and crystal, the air rich with the scent of roasted pheasant and red wine. Servants move silently, their hands steady as they pour from decanters or clear plates. The conversation is polite, but beneath it lies a current of uneasy talk of Serbian nationalism, of Russian ambitions, of a Europe arming itself for war. The empire's diversity, once its strength, is now its vulnerability, each nation pulling in its own direction, each voice demanding to be heard. You can walk the streets again, this time at dusk, the sky a soft violet, the gaslights flickering to life. The air is cooler now, carrying the scent of rain and the faint sweetness of linden trees. You pass a tavern where students gather, their voices loud with talk of independence, Czechs dreaming of Prague, Hungarians of Budapest, Croats of Zagreb. Their words are not yet rebellion, but they carry a weight, a promise of change that the empire cannot contain. You hear the clink of beer mugs, the strum of a guitar, the laughter that masks a deeper longing. Vienna is a city of beauty, but it is also a city on the edge, its elegance a fragile mask over a world that is slipping away. The bureaucracy, vast and sprawling, tries to hold the empire together. You can imagine visiting an administrative office, its rooms filled with the scent of ink and dust, its shelves groaning under the weight of ledgers. Clerks in stiff collars scribble endlessly, their pens scratching like insects in the quiet. They record taxes, troop movements, petitions from distant provinces, but their work feels futile, like trying to shore up a crumbling wall. The empire is too vast, its peoples too diverse, its problems too deep. You can sense the exhaustion in the clerks' faces, the way their hands pause, their eyes drifting to the window where Vienna's lights glow softly. The cafes, the operas, the balls, they are the heartbeat of Vienna, but they cannot drown out the growing unrest. You can stand in a park, the air scented with grass and blooming flowers, and hear the faint sound of a military band practicing in the distance. The soldiers in their blue and red uniforms march with precision, but their faces are young, their eyes uncertain. The empire is preparing for a war it cannot avoid, a conflict that will test its strength and expose its weaknesses. You can feel the weight of it, the way the city's rhythm falters, its waltzes growing slower, their melodies tinged with a quiet sorrow. This is Vienna in 1913, a city of light and shadow, of music and tension, of a world that is both vibrant and fading. You can sit in the cafe again, the violinist still playing, his waltz a gentle lullaby that carries you back to the present. The coffee is cold now, the newspaper folded, but the memory of Vienna lingers, its beauty a fragile thing, like a melody played on the last string of a breaking violin. The Habsburg world is slipping away, its end not yet here, but already written in the restless voices, the shifting alliances, the quiet decay of an empire too proud to see its own decline. The air in Vienna carries a faint chill now, the scent of rain mingling with the sweetness of linden blossoms as dusk settles over the city. It's June 1914, and the streets hum with their usual rhythm. Carriages clatter over cobblestones, gaslights flicker to life, and the soft strains of a waltz drift from a cafe's open window. Yet, beneath this familiar cadence, there is a tension, a quiet tremor in the pulse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The grand palaces along the Ringstrasse stand as proud as ever, their marble facades glowing in the fading light. But the world they represent is fraying, its elegance a fragile mask over a deepening fracture. You sit in a velvet-lined box at the Staatsoper, the air warm with the scent of perfume and polished wood, the orchestra's melody weaving a delicate spell. But the spell is breaking, and the Habsburg world is about to unravel, its final notes played in a distant city in a moment that will echo across the continent. The unraveling begins in Sarajevo, a Bosnian city where the empire's tensions simmer openly. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the throne, arrives on June 28, 1914. His visit meant to strengthen Habsburg rule over a restless province. Picture the streets of Sarajevo narrower than Vienna's, lined with stone buildings and market stalls, the air thick with the scent of grilled meat and dust. Crowds gather, their voices a mix of curiosity and unease. As the Archduke's motorcade rolls through the city, Franz Ferdinand sits upright in an open car, his uniform crisp, his wife Sophie beside him, her face serene under a white-brimmed hat. The sun is warm, glinting off the river that winds through the city, but the mood is heavy, weighted by the presence of Serbian nationalists who see the Habsburgs as oppressors. You can sense the moment before it happens, the way the air tightens, the way the crowd's murmur shifts. A young man, Gavrilo Princip, steps forward, his face pale, his hand steady. The sound is sharp, a crack that cuts through the chatter, a life extinguished in an instant. The Archduke and his wife slump in their seats, the car slowing as the crowd erupts in confusion. You don't linger on the scene, but you feel its weight, the way a single act ripples outward, like a stone dropped into still water. The news travels slowly at first, carried by telegraph wires whispered in Viennese cafes, printed in smudged newspapers. The empire is stunned, its court draped in mourning black, its emperor, Franz Joseph, retreating to his study, his face edged with grief and foreboding. The assassination is the spark that ignites the Great War, though its flames take weeks to spread. You can picture the diplomats in Vienna's chancelleries, their offices filled with the scent of ink and wax, their voices urgent as they draft ultimatums. Austro-Hungary demands justice from Serbia, its words sharp, its resolve hardened by loss. Alliances, long forged in treaties, pull Europe into a web of conflict. Russia backs Serbia. Germany supports Austria, and soon the continent is at war. You hear the distant sound of boots marching, the clatter of rifles being loaded, the low hum of a city preparing for a storm it cannot fully comprehend. Vienna's cafes, once alive with debate, grow quieter, their patrons reading telegrams with furrowed brows, their waltzes replaced by military marches. The war consumes the empire, its vastness both a strength and a weakness. You can walk the streets of Vienna in 1915, the air now heavier, scented with coal smoke and the faint tang of metal from nearby factories. The Ringstrasse is still grand, but its splendor feels hollow, its palaces overshadowed by recruiting posters and the clatter of ambulances. Soldiers, young and eager or weary and conscripted, march through the city. Their uniforms a patchwork of the empire's many nations: German, Hungarian, Czech, Croatian. You hear their voices, a chorus of languages, their footsteps uneven as they head to fronts in Galicia, Serbia, or Italy. The empire fights on multiple fronts, its resources stretched thin, its unity fraying under the weight of war. The cafes remain, though their tables are emptier now. You can sit at one, the air still warm with the scent of coffee. But the newspapers speak of battles, not ideas. The intellectuals who once argued over Freud or Klimt now write letters to soldiers, or volunteer as medics. The music continues, but it's softer, more mournful, as if the violins know the empire's days are numbered. You hear stories of the front fields churned to mud, men falling in waves, the air thick with the roar of artillery. The losses are heavy, not just in lives but in spirit. The empire's confidence eroding with each defeat. You sense the weight of it, the way Vienna's rhythm slows, its elegance dimming like a candle burning low. Emperor Franz Joseph, now in his mid-80s, feels the strain most keenly. You can picture him in the Hofburg, his study a haven of order in a chaotic world. The air smells of old leather and wax, the walls lined with portraits of his ancestors. He signs orders, meets with generals, but his hands tremble slightly, his eyes clouded with fatigue. He has ruled since 1848, through revolutions and reforms, but this war is different, its scale vast, its cost unbearable. You can hear the scratch of his pen, the soft creak of his chair as he writes to his allies. His words formal but tinged with despair. He does not live to see the war's end, passing in 1916. His death a quiet note in a symphony of loss. His nephew, Charles, takes the throne young and earnest, but the empire is already crumbling. Its peace is too heavy to hold together. By 1918, the war is lost and the empire is breaking apart. You can stand in Vienna streets, the air cold now, scented with frost and the faint smoke of burning documents. The cafes are nearly empty, their mirrors reflecting only a few tired faces. The news of defeat spreads, carried by telegrams and whispers, and the empire's nations begin to declare their independence. Czechs, Slovaks, Hungarians, Croats, they gather in their own cities, their voices rising in new anthems, their flags unfurling in colors the Habsburgs never flew. You hear the sound of typewriters in makeshift offices, drafting constitutions, proclaiming new states. The empire, once a mosaic, is now a shattered window, its pieces scattered across a continent redrawn by war. The Treaty of Saint-Germain, signed in 1919, formalizes the end. You can picture the diplomats in a French chateau, far from Vienna, their voices low as they carve up the empire. The air smells of ink and polished wood, the tables covered with maps and treaties. Austria becomes a small republic, its borders shrunken, its imperial dreams reduced to memory. Hungary, too, is severed, its lands divided among new nations. The Habsburgs are stripped of their titles, their palaces left to echo with the footsteps of caretakers. You sense the finality of it, the way a dynasty that ruled for centuries slips into silence. Its power dissolved in the stroke of a pen. The Habsburgs themselves fade into exile. You can imagine Charles, the last emperor, in a modest villa in Switzerland, the air scented with pine and lake water. His runes are simple, a far cry from the Hofburg's grandeur, but he carries himself with quiet dignity, writing letters, dreaming of a return that will never come. His wife, Zita, sits beside him, her hands folding linen or turning the pages of a book. Their children playing in a garden that feels too small for their name. You hear the soft clink of teacups, the murmur of their voices, as they speak of a world that no longer exists. The air is heavy with nostalgia, with the weight of a crown now stored in a velvet-lined box. Vienna, too, adjusts to its new reality. You can walk its streets in 1920, the Ringstrasse still grand but quieter, its palaces housing offices or museums. The air carries the scent of rain and rebuilding, the city finding a new rhythm as a republic's capital. The cafes reopen, their tables filled once more, though the conversations are different, less about empire, more about survival, about a future that feels uncertain but possible. The Stotzoper plays on, its waltz is softer now, their melodies carrying the memory of a lost world. You can sit in the audience, the velvet seats worn but warm, the music wrapping around you like a familiar shawl. The Habsburg legacy lingers in Vienna's stones, its music, its stories. You can visit Schönbrunn Palace, its gardens still blooming, their air scented with roses and cut grass. The rooms are open to visitors now, their chandeliers unlit, their mirrors reflecting only shadows. You hear the creak of floorboards, the soft echo of footsteps, as guides recount the empire's history. The city's intellectual life persists, too, in new voices, new ideas. But the grandeur of 1913 is gone, its decadence a memory preserved in paintings and songs. You feel the sorrow of it, the way a world can fade, not with a crash, but with a slow, graceful bow like a dancer leaving the stage. The waltz plays on, its notes lingering in the air, a reminder of Vienna's last dance. You can close your eyes now, the cafe's warmth fading, the music softening to a whisper. The Habsburg world is gone, its palaces quiet, its empire dissolved, but its echo remains, carried in the rhythm of a city that will always remember its past. The air grows still, the lights dim, and history settles around you, gentle and heavy, like a blanket draped over a sleeping world. The last notes of a Viennese waltz fade into the air, their melody softening like a sigh carried on a winter breeze. You're no longer in the muddy trenches of Verdun. nor the gilded halls of the Winter Palace, nor the bustling markets of Constantinople, nor the elegant cafes of Vienna. You're here now in the quiet of your own space, the world outside hushed, the weight of the day settling like dust in a forgotten room. The stories of the Great War and its fading empires linger, though, their echoes woven into the fabric of the night, their rhythms a gentle reminder of lives lived, struggles endured, and worlds lost to time. Step back for a moment to the fields of Verdun, where the earth was heavy with mud and the air thick with the scent of rain-soaked wool. The soldiers, their boots sinking into the mire, their hands clutching letters from home lived in a world where survival was measured in small acts sharpening a bayonet, sharing a cigarette, whispering a prayer under a sky torn by shells. Their lives were a testament to endurance, to the quiet strength found in the rhythm of routine. Even as the war ground on, relentless and unyielding, you can still feel the weight of their existence, the way the trench became both prison and refuge, a narrow strip of earth where humanity, flickered in the face of despair, now drift to the Winter Palace, its chandeliers dimmed, its corridors silent but for the echo of footsteps long gone. The Romanovs, once anointed by divine right, moved through their final days with a grace that belied their fate. You can picture Nicholas, his pen scratching across paper, writing of duty and faith, while Alexandra knelt in prayer, her rosary a lifeline in a world slipping away. Their children, playing in a garden or reading by candlelight, carried a spark of innocence that the revolution could not extinguish. Their story, tragic and slow, was not just the fall of a family, but the end of an era, a dynasty dissolving into the cold air of a Siberian night. Then wander to the markets of Constantinople, where the scent of spices and the call to prayer once filled the air with life. The Ottoman Empire, vast and ancient, faded not with a single blow but with a gradual unraveling, its provinces breaking free, its palaces left to whisper of past glories. You can still hear the soft notes of an oud, the clatter of a camel caravan, the murmur of voices in a dozen languages. The empire's twilight was a quiet one, marked by the dust of abandoned villages and the rise of a new nation, its legacy preserved in the soaring domes of mosques and the stories carried on the Bosphorus. Breeze, finally, returned to Vienna, where the waltz played on even as the Habsburg world crumbled. The cafes, with their clink of coffee cups and rustle of newspapers, were a haven for ideas, for music, for a city that danced on the edge of oblivion. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand, the war that followed, the treaties that carved up the empire, all were steps in a slow descent, a farewell to a world of imperial grandeur. You can still feel the elegance of it, the way the air smelled of lilacs and candle wax, the way the city's heartbeat slowed, its rhythm giving way to the silence of a new age. These stories, though distant, are not so far from you. They are the threads of a tapestry that stretches across time, connecting the mud of Verdun to the comfort of your bed, the icy halls of the Romanovs to the warmth of your room, the fading markets of the Ottomans to the quiet of your night, the last waltz of Vienna to the stillness of your present. The past is heavy, filled with the weight of lives lived under the shadow of war and change, but it is also a reminder of resilience, of the small acts that carried people through the darkest days. The soldiers who laughed in the trenches, the monarchs who clung to faith, the rebels who dreamed of freedom, the artists who painted beauty amid decay. They all found ways to endure, to leave their mark on a world that was shifting beneath their feet. Now, as you rest here, the world around you is softer, gentler. The air is not thick with the scent of mud or gunpowder, but with the familiar comfort of your own space, perhaps the faint smell of a candle, the rustle of a blanket, the quiet hum of a world at peace. The empires of the past, with their struggles and their splendor, are gone, their stories settling into the archives of history, their voices fading into the night. But they leave behind a lesson, a quiet truth, that even in the face of loss, life finds a rhythm, a way to move forward one steady step at a time. Let these stories cradle you now, their weight lightening as you drift closer to sleep. The trenches, the palaces, the markets, the cafes, they are part of a world that shaped the one you know, but they are not your burden to carry. You can let them go. Let their echoes fade. Let the rhythm of their lives blend into the rhythm of your own breathing. The past is a gentle companion, not a demand, its tale's a lullaby to guide you toward rest. Close your eyes, if you haven't already, and let the night take you, its silence a bomb, its darkness a canvas for dreams. If these journeys through history have soothed you, if the slow cadence of empires falling and rising has brought you peace, consider joining us for more. Subscribe to History Orbit, where we'll continue to weave these quiet tales, each one a bridge to the past, each one a step toward restful slumber. Your support keeps these stories alive, a gentle thread connecting you to the countless lives that came before. For now, though, let the world fade, let the waltz end, let sleep carry you away, as soft and certain as the turning of a page.